Hello and welcome to the return of the Oregonian OregonLive's Beaver Banter podcast. I'm Nick Daschel and I cover Oregon State football for the Oregonian. Depending on when you're listening, we're a week to probably just a few days from the Oregon State season opener against Idaho State. This year we'll be joined on the podcast by former Oregon State defensive lineman Isaac Hodgins. Isaac, welcome.
Hey, how we doing, Nick? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to kind of talk about where we're going and where our Beaver family is gonna go this year.
No more questions about your foot or anything like that, or how you're playing and all that. It's all about
Yeah, right.
being a
No,
fan now.
yeah, this is gonna be a tough transition, not gonna lie, but I can't wait to go to the games this year and kind of support the Beaver fam and kind of be a fan. It's
Yeah.
weird to say, but
Isaac played for the Beavers from 2018 to 2023. He played 6 years under Oregon State's new head coach, Trent Bray. Isaac's now out in what we like to call the real world. Give us an update
yeah,
on what you're doing now, Isaac.
yeah, out here in the real world, started after pro day, did some rookie mini camps, didn't work out. So I actually connected with a company called Pacific Office Automation. They're a sponsor of Oregon State Athletics, so I kind of knew their name. So I'm just doing sales in office technology world, selling everything from cybersecurity and managed IT to the actual hardware in your offices, so like copiers, printers, phones. So if you need anything like that, let me know. But yeah, first job in the real world and um, lost a lot of weight as we were talking about before. So it's definitely a different transition for me, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, Isaac looks like a big wide receiver now.
Right, exactly. I'm not quite slim enough for slot or anything like that, but I could pass for undersized tight end or
Yeah,
something like that. We'll see.
yeah. And your family, how they doing?
Family's doing good. My brother is in the heat of fall camp right now, competing. He's having a great camp. It's tough to connect because I remember during the dog days of camp, it's almost like nothing else exists out of the football world. I remember I'd finish fall camp and go down to downtown in Corvallis and be like, wow, people are actually like living life, doing things down here. There's like a farmer's market and stuff. So you kind of get trapped in this bubble of thinking football's all that there is. So he's in the heat of it, balling out. His family's doing well. My wife's doing great. She's coaching gymnastics here in Corvallis, and doing medical assisting. And yeah, family's well. And um, yeah,
Yeah, just most of you remember Isaac's brother Isaiah. He plays for the Giants. But just in case you didn't remember, that's who he was referring to.
yeah.
Uh, okay, well let's talk about the 2024 Beavers. Have you been to many practices, spring or fall? Yeah, I know you live in
Yeah,
Corvallis, so you're not too far away.
yeah, I'm not too far away. It's been tough to kind of get to things, just starting a new job in the real world. But I've been talking with a bunch of the guys. I go to church with a few of the guys who are on the team. And I'm good friends still with a lot of guys. Samisi's he just got voted as captain. Still talk to D-line room. They're looking good. I like the way Coach Bray has kind of everything set up. Like I saw during their walkthrough, their nighttime walkthrough during fall camp. They had the names on the back of their jerseys. They got their practice jerseys look good. Their uniforms look great. Um, I'm kind of jealous, not gonna lie. I was a year too late to get involved with everything, but they're looking good. I think there's a good chance of doing well, especially with our schedule this year.
Yeah.
I'm liking the way they're kind of looking.
What was your you went through 6 camps, one of them I obviously didn't weren't able to do much because you were hurt, but um
Right.
is it the grind that it appears to be, or what's it like going through camp?
Oh yeah, it's definitely the grind it appears to be. I remember my freshman year, my freshman season, that fall camp was different than any other fall camp, in being that I would get to the facility at around 6 a.m. You got to get taped before practice. You got to get your breakfast in, and breakfast doesn't open till 7. Um, so can't we would I would get there at 6 and I wouldn't leave until 10 at night because we had this thing where if you were new, you had to go to meeting. Coach Smith kind of started it, and we'd all introduce and get to know each other. Um, I'd be going from 6 to 10 every day. So it's definitely a grind, especially in the heat. It's tough. I mean, you're going to practice, you're doing a walkthrough, then you're going to practice. Well, first you're going to meetings, then you're doing a walkthrough, then you're doing practice, then you eat lunch and go to tutoring and whatnot, because you still got school. Some people got summer school, and then you go and work out, and then you go back to meetings, and then after that, we're gonna finish with a walkthrough at nighttime. Usually doing your walkthrough around 7 at night, so you're not finishing until around 8 p.m. every night. It's definitely a grind. It's a different beast for sure.
When you walk out of there at 10 o'clock at night, does it feel like you'd spent 16 hours on the grounds, or does it go pretty quick?
It goes, I mean, some days it goes pretty quick. Like on a Friday night, it'll go pretty quick. Friday it'll go pretty quick, but when you're on Monday and you're like, man, I got 5 more days of this, it's kind of like it goes by pretty slow. But when you're at this point of the season, right before, you're ramping up for you got a game coming up soon, week one. You look back and you're like, man, we already did 4 or 5 weeks of camp. Like that flew by. But when you're in the middle of it, it feels like it can't be over soon enough.
And we're taping here just afternoon, and we already have our first upset of the season. Georgia Tech just beat Florida State on a kick at the buzzer. So
No way.
DJU goes DJU goes down.
Man, that's me and my dad and my brother were just talking about that. Like, man, got hope he can pull that one out. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Man, that's the scary part about first game of the season, and that's why we had a motto: respect all or respect everyone, but fear no one. You can't go into the first game of the season thinking, hey, this is an automatic win because they're a smaller division school or whatever it is. They're not a powerhouse like us. And then, like you see an upset where, game week one, someone beats someone who they're not supposed to beat. Happens every year.
yeah. Your first game was at Ohio State, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started my true freshman year at Ohio State, and I remember it blows my mind still because no one really knew who Young was at this time. And so you see Chase Young, he's their second string defensive lineman. And then you look across the field, I'm the starting defensive lineman for Oregon State Beavers. And so I'm like this 5'11", pudgy, 275-pound defensive lineman, and this dude's a 6'5", shredded defensive end, and he's sitting behind someone. Like it blew my mind. And I remember everyone after that game was just like, who was number two? That dude was massive. He was huge. And then, the rest is history. He's a beast now.
Did you,
But yeah,
how,
that's a tough first game for a
how did
freshman for
you how
sure.
did you do? How did you do in the game?
My first play, the only thing going on in my mind is like, don't get pancaked. Don't get steamrolled by all these. I mean, their whole offensive line, their center was like 6'6", and usually centers are shorter guys. So they were massive, and I was just like, man, I just can't get pancaked. First play of the game, I just shoot out and I just fall right on my stomach, just because I didn't want to get put on my back. So I fell right on my stomach, and I remember watching the game afterwards, and Coach Lange, he was like, Hodge, this is your first ever college football play in history. Like this is what you put on film, and everyone's laughing, making fun of me. Uh, but yeah, it was. I mean, 110,000 people in the stadium, the ground shaking at kickoff just because of how loud it is. It's definitely a surreal. I was in high school the year before, a few months before that. You know, starting as a true freshman, it was a tough game to start. I definitely wish I could have started maybe not against Ohio State, but it's a funny story to tell
Yeah,
now.
you definitely like to ease into something like a Big Sky team or something like that, as
Right.
opposed to
Yeah.
one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah. And, that was one of those games where, we got a pick and then he got tackled. We got, I forget who it was. Um, our DB, he got tackled on the 2 yard line or something like that. And then we fumbled the ball the next play. And we would have taken the lead if we scored off that drive. And then we got blew out like whatever it was, like 74-24 or something. It was something insane.
Yeah, it was like a 14-14 game at one point, and then it
Yeah.
was 77-31, I think is what it ended up being.
Yeah.
No, but
Something insane like
you
that.
know,
But
that was
there was
that
at
was
one point we could have taken the lead, and we're like, man, we could actually win this game. Like it was one of
yeah.
those situations.
So, did you go back to a game like that even thinking you had a chance, or I mean, because you're supposed to go in these games thinking you can win everything, but I mean,
Yeah,
really,
no, yeah, I mean, and we were all pumped up. We went to the Hall of Fame before then, like 2 days before then, we were at the Hall of Fame. Everyone's all pumped up. I mean, we're in a 14-14 ball game. We're about to take the lead. We were like, man, like we got a real shot. Like in my mind, always you always go in thinking like, hey, we're gonna try to win this game. Like you don't go in thinking you're gonna lose, right? That's the reason you play the game. That's what my dad always says. If the game was already decided, you wouldn't play it. That's
right?
why Georgia Tech beat Florida State. It's you go in thinking you're gonna win. Um, but it was at that moment, I was like, man, we got this pick. We almost turned into a touchdown. We're on 2 yard line. We score right here. We're taking the lead. Um, and it's at that moment you're like, man, this is real. We really could win. And then it just kind of Joey
Yeah,
Bosa gets a sack fumble and they score a touchdown and then a punt gets blocked. It's just everything just starts kind of going downhill.
yeah. You got any good stories from 6 years of camp?
Oh, 6 years of camp. The only good story I got, I think this was a story that kind of earned me the starting job in my mind. This was a turning point. It was my freshman year. It was actually during spring ball. Um, and during spring ball, I was my parents were vegan at the time, and I had gotten two pulled pork sandwiches from McNary's, and I was showing them, they're like, "You're gonna get sick. Like that doesn't look good." I was like, "Ah, whatever." I ate these pulled pork sandwiches, coleslaw, whole 9 yards. Long story short, I get food poisoning. I'm up all night, sick. I mean, I'm so sick that blood vessels in my face were popped from being so sick, just because I was aggressively, doing what you do when you're sick.
Right.
Um, and so I show up to spring ball that day. I didn't skip practice because I was still feeling horrible. Didn't eat or drink anything that day. I'm throwing up during practice. Coach Mack sees me in the morning. He's like, Hodge, what's wrong with your face? Like, he was like disgusted. He was because it was all purple and it was bad. But I would just in the middle of drills, I just throw up, get back to the drill. And that was the moment where like I didn't tell anyone I was sick. I didn't complain about it. I fought through it. And that was the moment where I think Coach Lange realized just like, man, this kid's got some grit. Like he's fighting through this. Like most people, you just kind of take it off, take the day off. You got food poisoning. It's understandable, right?
Right.
I fought through it, and in my mind, that's kind of what changed people's view of me. Of like, oh, this isn't just some freshman coming in. Like this kid's hungry and he wants to start a job. Um, and so I think that in my mind is kind of one of my favorite stories of myself of just fighting through adversity and kind of showing the program who I am.
But that didn't stop you from eating meat, though, I take it.
Well, actually, during that, I actually did start going. Everyone started making fun of me, but I started a little vegan kind of on and off. I mean, you could imagine I wasn't a very big fan of eating meat anymore at the dorm. So I'm like, man, I think that year I didn't eat any. Like I had the nutritionist kind of get me different food and stuff, and I felt great. I mean, it is true what they say. Like you get more blood flowing through your body. You recover faster. You just got to eat a heck of a lot more. You got to eat like 7,000 calories, and that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
But eventually, got back to eating meat eventually. So
Yeah. You, you were you ever involved in any fights during camp?
yeah, quite a few.
Oh, really? Oh,
They're offensive line, defensive line. There's only one during 2020. I got in a few fights with my brother Marco Brewer. Um, but it was one of those things. Offensive line, defensive line. It's so physical. Someone does an extra push after the play. It's like, what are you doing? Um, so I'd grab people's, do a little Aaron Donald, grab people's face mask, pull them down to you, maybe mush them with, I don't want to break my hand or anything. I did throw a punch or two here and there.
yeah.
But it was all, we're all friends in the locker room afterwards, laughing about it, joking about it. Honestly, it's kind of fun. So, if
Yeah,
you're not fight, if yeah, it's
I actually think Trent is more forgiving on fights than Jonathan is.
yeah,
I'm not saying he encourages them, but he'll give
yeah.
them a few more seconds to go. I remember Jonathan backing down a few players after practice one day. He was not happy with it. Had been like two or
Well,
three fights, or I don't remember what year it
yeah,
was. It was probably 22, I think. I can't remember the
yeah,
couple players. He was really not. He was not. I think one of them was the receiver. Um, but I can't remember. I can't anyway. I remember he
Yeah.
backed him down to a corner and he let him have it.
Yeah, there are a few times where it's like, okay, if you're fighting so much that you're not getting anything done, now it's like, all right, guys, stop messing around. Like, let's get to practice.
Yeah,
But some of the coaches sometimes they usually like to see like a little bit of competitiveness, like some pushing and shoving. But like, let's be a pro about it. Don't break your hand on someone's helmet. Like, don't do something stupid like that.
right.
There were a few times where people did take it too far, where you are actually hitting hand to face, like getting under the chin strap, hurting people. That did happen a few times where now it's like, okay, that's a real problem. Um, so there was only two instances like that where I had seen where people were actually getting hit in the face. But it's kind of like brotherly love. Like I've hit my brother in the face when we were kids, but still
Yeah,
brothers.
yeah.
Um,
Well, since you played for Trent, what are your thoughts about him taking over as head coach? How do you think it will work out?
I think it's going to be great. I think it's tough right now, just in college football in general. Just the sphere of college football, just like whoever has the most money, you're going to get the best players and talent. Um, I'm still holding out for what's the owner of Nvidia? What's his name? He went to Oregon State.
Oh, Jensen Wong.
Yeah, I'm holding out for him to give a little tax write-off to Oregon State athletics or something. Maybe throw some stock into the NIL collective or something. I don't know. Just I'm holding out for that. But I think Coach Bray is an awesome coach. I mean, every time he spoke, he got me pumped up. I still use some things he would say during meetings, just like rage to master whatever skill or whatever it is, and that applies everywhere in life. Like, be passionate about what you're doing and go after it full force. And that's kind of how Coach Bray is. So he has no problem getting the team behind him and building a culture. It's just that natural landscape of college football where it is right now. There, I'm seeing it as may have to be a rebuild type of year for I don't know how long. We'll see. How we look after this first few games, but I'm definitely thinking it might be like a rebuild. Um, it's just the landscape of college football. You're almost rebuilding every season because people are moving like chess pieces. You know what I mean? You don't know who's going to be on your roster next year
Yeah.
from this year.
Did
It,
you
it's
did you
it's
wonder
just
how he might transition from being a coordinator to head coach, given that I mean he was so hands on during practices, and
right.
I mean I guess you could do that as a head coach, but it's probably I don't know, it's probably not. I mean, did you wonder how he might adjust to that, or
No, I just thought he would keep it the same way. I mean, like I look at coaches like Nick Saban, like he's very hands-on with his guys. I mean, he's in there. I mean, he's coaching routes. He's getting in there in close with people. Obviously, there's a fine line between, like, it's just like being a business owner. You could be working in your business or working on your business. And as a head coach, you kind of got to work on your team rather than working in your team. Um, but there's a fine line. I like I'm hoping Coach Bray has a little more hands-on. I like that personally from a head coach. Um, I like having the pregame speeches before games. I like having all that like in the locker room, like send me out pumped up. And I think Coach Bray is the perfect mold for that. And then obviously he comes from a football family. He knows what it looks like to do this coaching job at a high level.
will
So I
that
didn't I
be?
don't think he'll what was
I was
that?
just saying, do you think he'll be a lot different in pregame stuff than Jonathan was?
Yeah, I think he will. I think a lot of the things I don't know. We'll see. I'm not in there. I'll have to ask the guys. But just from my experience, we never really got like a pump up speech before you run out the tunnel from Coach Smith. And that's something I wish that we had. Like, you see, for example, like University of Washington or someone like everyone would gather up fourth quarter, like the whole team around the head coach. There's a bunch of teams that do it, right? Like pump you up for the last quarter or pump you up for the game, give you a pregame speech. Coach Smith was more of kind of give us speeches like during team meetings, and he was good in that aspect. Um, but I was definitely looking for I would have liked something a little more before the tunnel, like before you run out of the tunnel, like give us something to go off of.
Yeah,
Like we do our pregame prayer, and I would lead that, which would kind of pump some guys up. But it also hits a little different when it's your head coach kind of sending you out there too.
right. What do you think the mindset of the team's going to be, given that there's no conference and there's not a lot? You really don't know a lot about the future beyond 2024. Do you think players even think about that this season, or do you feel like it's just game ahead? It's just Idaho State, it's just San Diego State, it's just Oregon. That's all we care
Right.
about.
Well, I know Coach Bray has to have them focus on the fact that we do have our Power Five standing for this next 2 years. And so if you go out and you win every game this season, you have a shot at going to the college football playoffs. Like that's just
Yeah,
what like it was the college football playoffs is 16 teams this year, right?
12.
12. So you got a shot at one of those 12 spots because that's how it was set up. Like we have Power Five standing. If you win out, or if you at least get close, like you have a good record, you have a shot at the playoffs. And so I'm hoping that our guys are seeing that opportunity and seeing that, hey, like it doesn't matter if we're not in a conference, quote unquote. Like the at the end of the at the end of the day, every football team's goal is championship or bust. If you don't go to the championship, what was the
Yeah.
point of playing, right? I mean, what do you think on that?
Well, I was kind of curious what happens. I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's just say, things don't start out well. You beat Idaho State,
Right,
but maybe San Diego State doesn't go well and Oregon doesn't go well, and you're suddenly 1-2. And I mean,
right,
does a lot of the air go out of the balloon, or do you feel like this coaching staff will have their attention throughout the season? Goals don't necessarily change and all that. That's what I wonder when you don't have a conference and you're just
right.
playing, game to game. There's not, that sort of stuff. I mean, do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think on a selfish level as a player, you're always trying to put your best foot forward because NFL scout, like if your goal is go to NFL scouts are always watching, and
Yeah,
then obviously in this NIL sphere, like the better you play, the more you get paid. So
right.
there's now the incentive of like you're essentially a professional, right? You're getting paid to do this. Um, and so that is an incentive in and of itself that maybe is a little different than what it's been
Yeah,
over the past few years. But yeah, it is tough to be like, hey, we're not in a conference, but at the end of the day, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, I want to do my best. And then you just focus on each game, each game. Like my freshman year when we were horrible, right? We won 2 games, 2-10. Um, Even when we were 0-7 or whatever it was, we were still focused on this next game. Like let's go do our best. Let's go win this game. The hard part is in the middle of the game, it's not falling apart and going, oh, playing the blame game. It's the offense. You're not doing this. Defense, you're not doing that. Um, you just can't play the blame game. You got to stick to the culture of which I know Coach Bray will solidify. Like we're a team. We win as a team. We lose as a team. Like so Coach Bray, I'm hoping, is just solidifying this culture. And that's what Coach Smith did. We solidified a culture, and your first 2 years aren't the best, but it's not necessarily. You're building a program. You're not building a team. You're building a program.
yeah.
So I think that's kind of the main focus. I think.
Well, looking at the team, let's start with your former position group. There obviously a lot of turnover there. You lost you and Joe Golden and James Rawls and some other
Hmm.
guys. Um, of the players that you played with, who should we pay attention to? I mean, obviously all of them.
Yeah,
I mean, which
yeah,
ones
yeah,
really do you feel like are gonna, be impact type guys?
yeah. I think impact type guys. Thomas Collins. He was like me, except he's fat. He was faster. He's quicker. Um, I'm not gonna say stronger, but he was pretty close. He may be strong. He's stronger than me now. I'm 225. I hope he's stronger than me. But yeah, he's a good player. I'd watch out for him. Samisi Saluni, obviously. He was consistent last year, and I know he's gonna be playing even better this year. Um, those two guys for sure. I'd watch out for. Obviously, we got some younger guys too that I was there who like have some promise, like JoJo, and they had some promise. So I think it's open for the taking in that position group. But I think Thomas Collins and Sami Saluni, those are the guys who I'm thinking are
Yeah.
I'm watching those guys all year. When I go to the games, I'm watching them.
Well,
Yeah.
How much do you think the defense changes under Keith Hayward?
I mean, I can't imagine it's changed too much because obviously Coach Bray is the defensive coach, um, and he obviously has his scheme that he likes, and he likes pressuring, right? He likes pressures. He likes the 4 down scheme. We're moving, we're twisting, then we're switching up, we're playing vertical. So I can't imagine it's changed too much. And then the defensive linemen that you do have, they're more vertical type guys. Like they're not guys who want to sit there and take on a double team and build the wall. Like we're wanting to break down the wall and get vertical and cause chaos in the backfield. So I can't imagine it's changed too much.
Yeah.
I haven't asked the guys just because I just assumed that was how it was going to be.
And based on what you know of who's back and what you've seen, do you think the defense can be as formidable as it was the last couple of years?
No, I definitely think it can be. I think on the back end, you got guys like Skylar Thomas, you got Jaden Robinson, who are leading that back end. In linebackers, you got Melvin Jordan, who showed out in that Notre Dame game. And then you got your guys up front. You got Thomas and you got Samisi. I definitely think with these guys, the whole premise of the defense is we're not going to be on defense, essentially, is we're as a defense, we're playing offense. We're challenging you on every play. We're gonna make the backfield a mech. Like we're gonna mess it up, make it ugly, and we're gonna let our linebackers flow and um, we're gonna blitz. We're gonna make it as hard as possible on you to gain every. You're gonna earn every yard. Our corners, we're gonna press. We're gonna get in your face. We're gonna challenge you on every play, and that's Coach Bray's MO. I'm believing that's Coach Hayward's MO, just because Coach Bray is the head coach now. Um, and so when you have that sort of defense, it doesn't matter what type of talent, so to say, you have. When everyone plays aggressive and is playing offensively on defense, um, it doesn't matter. There's not going to be a huge drop off of when
Yeah.
you rotate your defensive guys because you're going to have to rotate playing that style, you
Right.
know?
Looks like the two position groups on defense that are probably the most settled are inside linebacker and cornerback.
Hmm.
Melvin Jordan and Isaiah Chisholm are both had some experience toward the end of the season. They get two seniors at cornerback. I mean, do
Right.
you agree with that? Does that seem fair? That
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
No.
defensive lines in transition and whatnot.
Right. And defense line, I mean, it's one of those positions where everyone is more than capable to do the role for the most part. It's having a good rotation of guys to where you go from one to two. Like defensive line is where everyone's basically going to get the same amount of plays. Everyone's going to get 30 plays or whatever it may be. So you need to have that solid two deep to be able to rotate these guys. Um, but yeah, it seems like on the back end they're pretty solidified, pretty solid. Obviously, when you vote someone as a team captain, like they're going to be a heavy player on every down. So, um, Melvin Jordan, yeah, Chisholm,
Yeah.
Skylar Thomas in the back end, Jaden Robinson, we're gonna have I think we're gonna have a solid defense for sure. I'm not worried about that at all.
How much did Oregon State miss Skylar Thomas last year?
I mean, I think having Skylar, I mean, Skylar is one of those players. He's long, he's fast, he's smart, he's humble. Um, Yeah, he was definitely a big loss last year. So having him back for this year on a team that may be not as experienced or as solidified is huge. I think it's huge to have him.
Yeah. Offensively, we still don't know who's going to start at quarterback, but I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. But even
No,
though
I don't.
it may have been settled, what do you know about the three quarterbacks, Ben and Giovanni McCoy and Jabari Johnson? I don't know how much you've seen of the other two, but um,
Yeah,
what do
honest.
you know about those three? And
I can't speak much on all three of them. The only one I can really speak much on is Ben. And Ben is just, I mean, he's the consistent, he's the game controller. He's that guy who you could send out there on any given game and trust that he's going to know what he's doing. He's smart. He has good chemistry with his teammates. Like everyone loves him. And he's a leader. Obviously you saw he got voted as team captain. Um, he's a guy you're going to be able to count on any game you go into whether he's starting or not or whatever it may be, you're gonna be able to count on him in the game. I don't see why he wouldn't start. I'm not sure on what the offensive side of things look like. I'm a defensive guy, so I'm always focused on the defense. Um, but Ben, he's that consistent game controller, uh, reliable guy you could always count on.
In Giovanni McCoy and Jabari Johnson, they both have the dual threat skills.
Yeah.
Ben says he can run. I mean, I don't
He
know.
can run, man. He's
I
hit
know
20 miles per hour, I'm pretty sure, on his catapult. I've seen a few times. So he's got some wheels, man. He's got that deceptive speed.
he's not Jake Luton. What you're saying?
Hey,
Jake
Jake
Luton.
Lewin could move too. There was
Oh,
one game Jake Lewin ran for the touchdown against UCLA. You
I
remember
remember
that?
that. I remember that. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
don't
he
think
he
Jake
ran
was
like
running.
21 miles per hour on that play.
Jake wasn't running too much, but anyway, I was
Yeah,
going to ask when you got a guy like especially Jabari Johnson who can just take off at a moment's notice. What sort of problem does that present for the defensive front?
the headache. I hate it. I wish every quarterback was a Tom Brady who just sit in the pocket and when you go to sack him, he just falls down and gives you the sack. That's what every defensive lineman, every defensive player wants. You don't want to have to, because when you have a dual threat quarterback, that outnumbers the defense, right? You got seven defenders in the box or whatever it may be. When you've got a quarterback threat, now you got another person you got to account for who can run the ball. So you got to, especially for a guy who is an actual dual threat quarterback, he can run on any given play, like a Jaden Delora or like a Jaden Daniels or a Delora or a guy like that. Um, you got to put a spy on this guy. And even when you put a spy on him, when you got all your DBs, you're running far routes or whatever it may be, everyone's gone. I mean, if he beats that quarterback spy, he's running for the fences. And so
Yeah,
that's the fear you always have. And so it changes your rush plan as a defensive lineman. You can't just do a quick swim move on the guard and try to go get the sack. You gotta kind of collapse the pocket around this guy and build a net around him. Um, to make sure he doesn't have any escape lanes. And it sucks as a defense lineman to have to do that because now you're not able to rush the way you want to. You're not able to do your quick finesse moves because if you do that and you open up a rush lane, the quarterback's gone for 20 yards down the field and it's no one else's fault but
yeah,
yours.
yeah. I remember the UCLA game last year when they brought in, I think it was named Schlee, the backup. Remember that
Yeah,
game? He was where it seemed like every other play he was. I don't know
quarterback
what.
power.
I mean, do you remember what a nightmare that was trying to? He finally
Yeah.
got hurt, I think, but um,
Yeah, and I mean, it just throws a whole different wrench into the ball game where you got to readjust on the sideline. Like, okay, this quarterback's in now. We're gonna have to change our rush plans. We're gonna have to put a spy on this guy. We can't run this certain coverage. It's just a headache.
yeah,
And then let alone in the run game, now you got an extra person you got to account for on the read option and all this kind of. You just got to be very disciplined. It just mandates you be very disciplined, which is hard in defense where you're taught to just go forward, make a mess of things. Now it's like, okay, do that in a controlled manner to where you're able to make sure this guy is not getting any escape lanes.
right. Damian Martinez left in the spring, but it seems like the
Yeah,
combo of Jam and Anthony Hankerson, they can make up for his loss. You agree with that?
no problem at all. Those guys, Jam, I believe, even if Dame was still there, Jam is playing a good amount of plays just because Jam is, I mean, he's a beast. He's got it all. He can move and he can put his shoulder down and run you over. It's just a matter of having a good rotation, making sure people are fresh and not overworking dudes.
Jake Reichel looks like a wild card. He put on 20 pounds, and he looks like. I mean, he's not you when you were lining up
Yeah,
in the backfield, but he's a lot bigger, and he's a fullback looking type. What is that?
headhunter.
What does
I
that
call
look like?
oh Yeah, I always called him headhunter, man. He's one of those dudes who, if you're on kickoff or kickoff return, you're like, gosh, dang it, like this kid, he's just gonna run full speed into my face. Like he does not care whatsoever. And that's the kind of mentality you need at fullback. Um, and so I think he's gonna be a baller. Honestly, he's fast, he's strong, and he does not care. Like he will just go run and put his face on someone, and that's what you got. That's a mentality you got to have. Like my dad used to tell me that playing fullback. He's like, because for me it was harder for me to transition to fullback because I had the mentality of as a defensive player, like I'm breaking down, right? You don't want to break down when you're going to block someone. You want to run through their face. And so my dad would tell me when he was in the NFL, on some plays he would just pray before the play, be like, you know what, God, this is my last play, it's my last play. Like that's the mentality you have to have at fullback of like it's just
Yeah,
one of those positions where you are running full speed into another human being who wants to knock your head off. And you gotta not care about if you get knocked out in that play. And that's just the position it is. And Jake's perfect for it.
yeah.
He's perfect for it.
He's already run over a few guys in practice this year. It's I mean,
Yeah, oh man, I gotta go see that.
it was in the scrimmage. I'm trying to remember who he ran over, but it was pretty impressive. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was wasn't that the highlight of your career? The touchdown you caught it was it Cal?
yeah, Cal. I would say that's up there. I got a big picture of it in my parents' house. A big, like shoot, 40 by 40 photo. Like it takes up the whole wall. Um, yeah, it was pretty awesome. Didn't know that would be like one of my last games, but it's great to have gotten that memory.
Yeah. You went against obviously went against the offensive line every day in practice. From the players who return, what do you know about them?
I mean, Josh Gray, obviously, I mean, he stays healthy, he's going to be a top draft pick in the draft coming up. He's strong, he's fast, he's smart. Um, he's a monster. Um, and then all the other guys like Jacob Strand, they were all solid guys. Hoping, they put on some weight, which is good, which they needed to do. Um, it's just tough to say because they were so young in my eyes last year. But it's one of those things where it just takes a year for someone to transition and kind of get their feet underneath them to be like, hey, I I'm able to do this now. Like for Catan, obviously, like when he first was a freshman, my brother he was gashing him, right? He didn't think much of him, but now Catan turned into a top prospect in the NFL draft for defensive back, and it didn't take that long for him to do.
Yeah.
And so offensive line is one of those positions where you just put on a little more weight. I think those guys are gonna be good.
What do you think it's as a defensive lineman? What would you think it would be to line up against a guy like Gerard Christian? I'm thinking how do you say his last name? Lichtenhan. He's a 6'10". He's their left tackle. What would it be like to line up
Yeah,
against a 6'10" left tackle?
yeah, it's for me as a shorter guy, it sucks because the reason they like such tall guys at offensive line and defensive line isn't because of their heights, because their arm length, right? If you could get a defensive lineman who's 6 foot but has arms that like a 6'10" individual, that's the guy you want because he gets under people and he gets far away from people. That's why
Yeah,
Aaron Donald's so great. People don't know he's shorter, yeah, but his arms are just as long as anyone else's, if not longer.
yeah,
Um, and so lining up against a 6'10" guy sucks because, in order for me to even compete with this guy, I gotta get in his chest and I gotta get close. If he doesn't let me get close, pass blocking, it sucks, unless you get him to move his feet one way or another, you're not gonna be able to get past this guy just because of his length alone. So having length like that on your offensive line, is a huge plus.
yeah.
Huge
He's got
plus.
a seven. I think it's got a 7 foot wingspan.
Yeah,
So
it's insane. It sucks. It's horrible. I believe that was he on Colorado
yeah, he
last
was in
year?
Colorado last year.
Yeah, so I played against him, and yeah, it's not easy. It's
Yeah,
definitely it's tough.
yeah. Their center was their center was is also Oregon State center this year too.
Yeah,
Um,
he was he's good. I liked him when we played him. I thought he was one of the better Colorado offense linemen.
yeah.
I can only imagine he's gotten even better with being with this group of guys.
One thing about the offense you played on the teams you play at the offense, it seemed to take care of the football a lot, which is huge for a good defense because you're not put in a lot of situations where you're having to defend a short field. I just wonder I don't know how this offense is going to operate in terms of taking care of the ball, and we just don't know. I mean, you think they're going to be try to do it, but you just don't know how
Yeah.
deflating is it for a defense when it has to defend short fields because of turnovers.
Yeah, it is deflating. But it's just one of those things of like we're a team, so when we got to pick up the offense. That was exactly what our mentality was like. All right, let's pick up the offense. Let's get them going again. And then when we would give the offense, put them in a bad situation, be like, all right, we got your defense. It's good. We got your defense. And that's who a guy like Josh Gray, he's great at that. Like, right? If we messed up on defense, he's like, we got y'all, we got it. And then they go and get it. We're like, all right, thank you. And it's vice versa. Um,
Yeah.
so it is deflating, and that's part of the problem. First game, you don't get to practice ball security and tackling as much because you're not going live all the time. This isn't 1980 when you did full contact practices during fall camp and you did 2 or 3 of them a day. This is a game now where you're limited to how many times you could go full pads. You're limited to how many times you could tackle.
Yeah.
And so that's always the first game for every team. It's ball security and tackling. Those are two things that every team's going to struggle with first game, and you kind of learn from it, and you learn where you're weak at, and then you drill it that next week.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's time for a couple of picks here. What do you feel like could be the biggest win of the season? I mean, obviously Oregon, if they were able to beat
Right.
Oregon, but we'll throw Oregon out because duh. I mean,
Okay.
if Oregon State
Right.
beats Oregon, you might as well stop the
Yeah.
season right there. It doesn't really
Right.
get much better than that.
No,
Well, beyond Oregon, what would you say the biggest win of the season could be?
I say the biggest win of the season, first of all, is this one. You go out and you blow out your first opponent. That's a huge boost to the morale. It's, hey, all that work we did during fall camp, during spring ball paid off. We're on the right track. Um, s at San Diego State, I think you win that game. That's a huge boost. We're at San Diego State this year, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a huge boost. That's a hard place. That's just a hard place to win. They're a good team in a home atmosphere. You go and beat San Diego State at their house. I think that gives you great momentum for the rest of the season. Of like, okay, just like this first win, we stuck to the process, right? If you're process oriented, we stuck to the process. You get the results. If you're always focused on the results, it's hard to do because you may not get the results. But if you stick to the process, which I know Coach Bray's gonna put them to, um, you go and win those games, man, that's a huge boost to the season, and the rest can be history, hopefully. What
So
do
what
you
do you
think? What games are you thinking?
I'm not writing off Boise State yet. I know everybody thinks Boise State's going to be great. On paper, they are, but that's 12 games from now. Who knows what?
Right.
I mean, Boise State usually has a pretty good starting lineup, but I don't
They got a
know.
good
You
program,
lose
yeah.
4, 5, 6 guys by then. Who knows how good they'll be? And
Right.
I think that's a game. Depending on how Oregon State plays through the season, I could see him picking off Boise State. Boise State is. I've noticed over the years that they usually play well early, but they're not always great late because attrition just starts getting to you. But that's one
Right.
game I kind of think that you know let's see how the season plays out. But I think it's a chance. There's a chance in that
Right.
game. Um,
What do you think about the Fresno State? We got them, right? What do you think
no, no,
about
no. Fresno State. It's
no Fresno State this year?
no, it's Cal. It's Oregon, then Cal, then Colorado State, Reno, Nevada, Reno. You played there.
Are
Remember
we
that?
there
Yeah,
at
you're
Reno?
at Reno.
Okay,
At
that's
Reno.
another one. That's a hard place. That's a hard place to win. That's a hard place to win. I mean, if we could get a Cal win, that'd be huge, obviously, because they're a former Pac-12 team, right? Um, I think that'd be huge. That'd
Yeah.
be super. That'd be super big.
The,
And then,
the game I'm sure that you're glad that you're will no longer be playing is when they go to Air Force. Correct?
oh yeah, I actually know a few of those Air Force players. They got some good D linemen on their team, man. I worked out with some of them when I was back in California. Um, yeah, they got some good guys on their team, but that's a cold game, man. That's a cold game.
But it's also an offense you don't see more than
Yeah,
you just don't see it and
it's it's the
and
elements.
aren't they blocking a lot on hitting your legs a lot and
Yeah, they're kind of like a Cal Poly. Yeah. It's one of those games where you just got to be disciplined. That it comes down to you got to be disciplined. Whoever has the running back, you tackle the running back. Whoever has the quarterback, you tackle the quarterback, right? You don't try to cover someone else's job. So if you could just be disciplined in those games, I think those are games you could win. Um, where they beat people, where Air Force beats people is people get undisciplined. Everyone's chasing the running back and the quarterback pulls and he's gone. You know,
Yeah. That'll be a week where the coaches wear out the phrase "do your job."
do your
I
job. That's
I
it.
mean,
If you could do
uh,
your job, it should be a win.
what's your thinking on a season record?
Oh, you go first.
I mean, I'm thinking 8-4.
I was gonna
I
say the
honestly
same.
think
I'm thinking 8. Yeah,
I honestly think it could be anywhere between 5 wins and 10 wins, but I'm thinking 8-4.
yeah.
I I did
I mean,
some of
8
these
and 4,
seasons.
in my opinion. In my opinion, that's a decent season just because I am considering it as kind of like you're rebuilding. You are rebuilding the program. I mean, we talked about it. How many people did we lose last year?
Yeah, there's
Or
only three
from
returning starters, which in this era isn't as big a deal because of the transfer portal, but still, that's still a lot of losses.
yeah. And especially for a program, you're trying to, like, I know Coach Bray, you're trying to build a program, you're trying to build a culture. It's hard to build a good culture when you just got people in and out all the time. So if you could find the right guys to plug in,
Yeah,
but I think 8 wins would be huge.
yeah,
That'd be a great season
and then a bowl game. So
in a bowl game. Yeah,
somewhere along the way. So, will you be at Saturday's game?
yeah, I'm gonna be there. My cousin's actually the running back at Idaho State, so um,
Oh,
he's playing running back there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you're not rooting for Idaho State, I
No,
assume.
I'm not rooting there. I'm not rooting for them, but um, I, I'm hoping we can win and then he can still do good.
Yeah,
That'd be perfect.
he can get some yards after it's like 45-7 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly,
I don't
exactly.
honestly know. I don't know how good Idaho State's supposed to be, but I know the coach is isn't it Cody Hawkins, Dan Hawkins' son, and you remember Dan Hawkins? He coached at or Boise State and Colorado um, and Cal Poly. I think he was Cal Poly's coach when um, anyway. Okay, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Beaver Banter podcast. We'll record each week during the 2024 season with the goal to have the pod out by Monday morning. We'll see you next week.